5 days after my C-section in a Chicago hospital, I still couldn't sit up without bracing myself. The incision burned every time I shifted, and my body felt hollow and weak. Around me, other new mothers had visitors coming and going. Their partners brought homemade food, held their babies clumsily, and whispered reassurances. Laughter floated through the room. At my bedside, there was only silence. My husband, Daniel, had shown up just once since the birth. He stood near the door, glanced at the baby for a second, and spent the rest of the time staring at his phone. When he finally returned on the 5th day, the faint smell of alcohol followed him inside. He didn't ask how I was healing. He didn't ask if our son was feeding well. He didn't even come closer to the crib. He stopped at the foot of my bed and asked, "Do you have any cash on you?" I thought I'd misheard him. When I said no, his expression hardened. He complained about work dinners, drinks, and expenses, then told me to call my parents for money. I reminded him I had just given birth and that our son needed him. Instead of softening, he snapped. He said he was the one earning money and didn't have time for emotional drama. Then he said the sentence that ended my marriage. "The one who gives birth is the one who raises the child." It landed heavier than the surgery pain. In that moment, every promise we ever made felt empty. I watched him leave without looking back, and I understood something terrifying and clear. I was already a single mother. That night, after the ward lights dimmed, I called my mother. The moment I heard her voice, the strength I had been pretending to have disappeared. I told her I couldn't keep going like this. She didn't ask for explanations. By sunrise, she was on her way. The next morning, my brother arrived too. He carried my bag, slowed his steps so I wouldn't strain myself, and didn't ask questions. We left the hospital quietly. No calls, no notes, no goodbye. The drive back to my parents' rural home was long and silent. Skyscrapers faded into open fields. With my son sleeping against my chest, I realized I wasn't running away. I was returning to the only place where we were truly safe. When we arrived, my father opened the door and said just 2 words, "You're home." He didn't lecture. He acted. He cleared a room, fixed a loose window lock, and made sure I could rest without fear. For the first time since giving birth, I slept without my heart racing. 2 days later, he took out an old folder and told me to get dressed. We went to town. At the registry office, he calmly registered my son under my last name and listed our family home as his legal residence. In our traditional community, this was shocking. He knew people would talk, and did it anyway. That decision became a shield. My father made it clear, if a man refuses responsibility, this family will step forward and protect its own. 3 days later, Daniel showed up at our gate. He came with a lawyer and a man whose clenched fists spoke louder than words. He accused me of kidnapping my own child and demanded I return immediately. My father opened the gate and invited them in. He offered water. He asked where Daniel had been during the birth, why there were no diapers, no visits, no calls. Then he placed the birth certificate and residency papers on the table. The lawyer's tone shifted. The accusations lost their weight. When the threatening man stepped forward, my brother appeared beside him, silent, solid. The yard went quiet. Daniel cursed, threatened, and finally retreated. He drove away furious and empty-handed. My father closed the gate behind him like it was just another chore. Life settled, but guilt followed me. My parents never complained, yet I knew I couldn't remain a burden. Once the house fell asleep, I began working in secret. With my incisions still aching, I sat up at night doing small online jobs, transcription, basic bookkeeping, anything I could find. I worked quietly, afraid my mother would hear the keyboard and make me stop. My back burned, my eyes stung. Some nights I cried without making a sound. Then one morning, I saw my first payment arrive. It wasn't much, but my hands shook as I stared at the number. I cried. not from exhaustion but pride. That money meant I wasn't helpless. I could stand on my own, even slowly. Endurance was no longer my future. Independence was. When Daniel realized threats no longer worked, he turned to rumors. He told people I was lazy, unfaithful, a woman who ran home to live off her parents. In a small town, gossip spreads faster than truth. It reached the clinic, the one place where women usually bond. One morning, while waiting with my baby, Daniel's aunt confronted me loudly. She questioned my morals in front of everyone. This time, I didn't bow my head. I told her plainly that I had raised my child alone from a hospital bed, while his father chose distance over responsibility. I said I wasn't ashamed of protecting my son or myself. My voice didn't shake. The room stayed silent. From that day on, the whispers softened. Not long after, a leader from the local women's association visited me. She didn't bring pity. She brought options. She told me about women who had survived hardship and rebuilt together. Listening to them, I noticed a pattern. Many wanted to sell eggs, vegetables, or handmade goods but didn't know how to use computers or manage simple accounts. I offered to teach basic skills online at night. The first classes were imperfect. Babies cried. Internet connections dropped. We laughed through the chaos. But the lessons worked. Slowly, people began calling me teacher. My pain had finally become something useful and sustainable. Just when life stabilized, Daniel returned again, this time with stronger legal pressure. Lawyers spoke of custody, licenses, taxes. They warned my success could be used against me. I nearly broke. Losing income was frightening. Losing my child was unbearable. Then my father stood up and brought out an old notebook. Inside were dates, places, witnesses, every missed visit, every unanswered call, even the words Daniel had spoken after the birth. Page by page, he read the truth aloud. The lawyers fell silent. Daniel turned pale. He finally understood something irreversible. Lies fade, but records endure. After that, peace followed. My work grew, my income stabilized, my parents slept easier. I wasn't chasing revenge, I was choosing dignity. In the quiet months that followed, I began to understand how deeply fear had shaped my early choices. I had mistaken endurance for love and silence for loyalty. I thought surviving meant shrinking myself until conflict passed. But safety never comes from disappearing. It comes from clarity, boundaries, and the courage to say no when respect is absent. Motherhood reshaped me in ways pain never could. Each night, as I watched my son sleep, I felt a responsibility far greater than marriage or reputation. I was no longer proving my worth to anyone. I was modeling it. I wanted him to grow up seeing strength without cruelty, independence without bitterness, and compassion without self-erasure. I also learned that asking for help is not weakness. My parents did not rescue me because I failed. They stood beside me because family is meant to be a foundation, not a judgment. Their support did not trap me. It gave me room to rebuild. There were setbacks, of course. Some days the workload felt endless. Some nights exhaustion returned like an old ache. But the difference was this: I no longer felt trapped. Even on the hardest days, I knew my choices were mine. Over time, I stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. Closure arrived quietly, not through confrontation, but through consistency. Each bill I paid myself, each woman I helped gain confidence, each peaceful morning became proof that my life was no longer defined by abandonment. I didn't rebuild to be admired. I rebuilt to be free. Freedom looks like stability. It sounds like calm. It feels like waking without dread and sleeping without regret. This story isn't about a man who failed. It's about a woman who chose not to disappear when it would have been easier to fade. Winning isn't destroying someone else. It's protecting what matters. Storms don't define your worth. what defines you is who you become after the storm, when you finally decide to stand on your own feet and live without fear.